When most people imagine World War I, they picture mud-soaked trenches, gas masks hanging like ghostly reminders, and soldiers huddled in endless lines of dugouts. But what often gets overlooked is that one of the greatest battles of the entire war was fought with rifles or artillery at all. It was fought with hunger. Supply lines crumbled under constant shell fire. Food spoiled long before it reached the front, and men were stranded for weeks in freezing, ankle-deep sludge with nothing fresh to keep them going. Yet somehow, against all odds, they endured. They didn't have freeze-dried meals or high-tech military rations. What they relied on was primitive food, so basic it barely resembled a meal. But that simplicity is exactly what made it powerful. It needed no refrigeration, almost no preparation, and it carried a soldier through days of brutal combat. This wasn't just sustenance. Was survival science born out of desperation? World War I soldiers didn't need comfort, they needed endurance. And in a world where hot meals were a rare luxury, rations had to survive mud, cold, rats, and weeks without resupply. Anything complex fell apart long before it reached the line. That's how the humblest foods, hardtack, pea sausage, and tinned meat, became lifelines. Hardtack, a rock-hard biscuit made from nothing more than flour, water, and salt, was nearly impossible to chew unless soaked. But it was immune to rot, mold, and insects. In the filth of the trenches, where everything else turned foul, hardtack stayed reliable. What made it extraordinary wasn't flavor, it was the total lack of moisture. Without water, nothing could grow on it, and nothing could destroy it, and that meant soldiers always had the carbohydrates they needed to march, dig, fight, and simply stay alive. Germany created its own survival miracle. Erbswurst, the pea sausage, a dense roll of dried pea flour, salt, and pork fat. It transformed into a hearty soup with just a bit of boiling water. Peas provided slow, sustaining energy. Fat delivered the calories needed to endure freezing nights. The chemistry was genius, everything necessary, nothing wasted. Germany produced it by the ton, and soldiers swore by it. And the truth is, its principle still works today. Dry the ingredients, add salt, seal with fat, create something that lasts months, even years, without spoiling. Simplicity wasn't a limitation during the Great War, it was the innovation. Remove water, add salt, seal out air. That formula preserved life. British troops lived on tinned bully beef, corned beef, protected by its own fat, sealed so tightly it didn't need refrigeration and could be eaten straight from the can. Mixed with crumbled hardtack, it became trench stew, a warm and moral-boosting meal cooked over tiny flame burners. Soldiers combined what little they had in clever ways, turning bare-bones rations into something that could sustain a body and steady a mind after days of bombardment. That resourcefulness, learning to stretch simple ingredients into energy and warmth, these the real heart of survival. And the lessons haven't changed. Modern prepping often focuses on gadgets and expensive freeze-dried meals. But the truth is that the same foods that carried men through World War I still work today. Grains, salted meat, dry legumes, fats that store without spoiling. Those simple staples kept millions alive through one of the harshest conflicts in history. They taught soldiers now us that survival doesn't come from luxury. It comes from understanding what the body truly needs and how to preserve it with the most basic elements. What made these wartime foods legendary wasn't their taste. It was their universality. No matter the uniform, British, German, French, or Belgian, the same rules of preservation kept men alive. Dryness, salt, fat, simplicity. And in a world where our supply chains are more fragile than ever, those old lessons feel newly important. Food security begins with knowledge, not convenience. If there's anything we can take from the soldiers who scraped by in the trenches, it's this: the simplest foods are often the most dependable. They remind us that survival isn't a science reserved for modern technology, it's a discipline carved into the endurance of those who learned it the hard way. And if this deep dive into the forgotten survival foods of World War I gave you something to think about, make sure to subscribe to In the Beginning for more history-rooted survival wisdom. Share this with a fellow history or outdoor enthusiast, because the best lessons aren't printed in manuals, they're carried through time by the men who lived them, one ration at a time.